Hello, this is Becky Shank, and I just wanted to thank you for coming to my YouTube channel. I am a clinical social worker. My interest right now is learning as much as I can. And there's my doggie, Kato. Say hi, Kato. What I'm doing right now is I'm learning and growing myself and integrating universal spirituality into the work that I do. And I'm just trying to create a platform where we can collectively come together and begin to talk about some of those things that may be outside of our belief system or outside of our boundaries. And so I think it's healthy to actually stretch these sort of boundaries and our understanding that we are constantly evolving and changing as individuals, and that a lot of truth exists outside of our current belief system if we just open our mind and step out of the box and allow the divine guidance to come through for us. So anyway, that's why I developed this YouTube channel. And it's also why I developed my Facebook group, the Holistic and Intuitive Therapist and Coach Collective. So I hope you enjoy this episode today that involves a discussion of some of my friends and colleagues about that very topic of intuition. So have a great day. Thank you. And also don't forget to like and subscribe. Appreciate it. See ya. So yeah, Stephanie, I want to hear about what you've been up to lately. I have had a chance to speak to Lisa. Unfortunately, we didn't record that our time together, Lisa. We'll have to do another one and actually record it so we can show everybody. I had spent some time with Akam on Monday and trying to get that video downloaded into our group. And today I spoke to Adrian and David and was able to record both of those meet and greets with them. So it's been really fun getting to know everyone and hearing about everybody's gifts and how they're growing in their practice and individually. And I know Stephanie is brilliant and she's very gifted, and I've taken a yoga class from her once. She lived about an hour and a half away from me in Iowa, so I didn't get up there very often, but yeah. So I'd love to hear what you've been up to.
Yeah, well, I graduated last May, right? So I was a yoga teacher for years. And then I was meeting with people just one-on-one doing private yoga. I can't call it therapy because Yoga Alliance doesn't allow you to use that word. But now I'm a therapist so that I can call it therapy.
Yes.
And in this last year, I did sand tray training, which I love, the subconscious work in that.
Yes.
I've done EMDR training. And I also do play therapy. So I do like everything, but it's all the same, you know?
Yes.
It's all just energy work. Yeah.
And you're integrating yoga too, correct?
Yep. A lot of orienting, grounding. A lot of people, just kind of left their bodies recently or a long time ago. More now, I think, because of COVID, there's more people out of their bodies. But
absolutely. Yeah. In what ways are you helping them come back into their bodies with your work?
I do a lot of psychoeducation just on like the new vagus nerve and the old vagus nerve and the stress response and how do we treat bottom up versus top down. And so there's that piece. And then, there's the experiential part of the activities that you do to ground.
Right. Like I know I took a yoga, I think it was just like a one-day training, and she was showing us how to use yoga in our work. But of course, you can't use yoga in your work as a therapist unless you're a yoga practitioner and have had the training. So
I call it kinesthetic mindful movement.
Yeah,
that's what we call it.
Right. And
yeah,
there's a lot of moves that involved, stretching the vagus nerve and doing some different exercises and humming and balance. And it was something I'm really interested in. I don't know. I'd love to go to Tibet or go to India or somewhere and spend months with the yogis and meditate all day.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'll ever get to fly internationally anymore, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
I mean, most of the work is in you, right? So clearing yourself so that you can step into their energy space and feel what's them, and then being able to differentiate, is this me or is this them? And then working with what they present that day.
Exactly. Absolutely. I love it. Well, that's the key thing that you mentioned, is like clearing ourselves to be able to do that, centering ourselves and doing our own inner work. And that's something that I think is really important, that a lot of professionals don't take the time to do. I mean, because if we are able to do our own work and then continue to do that, even, things that come up in our session with our clients, countertransference, that a lot of times we don't pay attention to. There's such valuable information that that can teach us about ourselves and the work that we can do outside of session. But I know that most therapists and counselors and coaches and anyone that's working in any kind of healing modality or treatment modality is probably stretching themselves kind of thin. They're probably not taking the time to process what's happening in the session outside of the session with someone, and they're probably not getting their own needs met. So that's super, super important. And that's one thing that I feel like I'm guided to somehow create some opportunity for that to happen, and to maybe to make it easier so it doesn't have to take hours. You have to write all the progress notes, and you got family, you have to worry about. So wish there was
Luckily, I get to choose my hours. I somewhat get to choose my clients, not necessarily, but I don't have to fill it with 9 clients a day. Like my max is 5.
That's good. Well, at least you know where your limit is. I was the same way. I remember there was a period of time where I was seeing 9 and 10 a day, and I was just exhausted. And at that time, I was working for somebody else's practice, private practice. And I just realized, I'm like, well, I think I'm going to do it myself. So that's when I started my own. So yeah, I think we lost Lisa. She's in the middle of a thunderstorm in Florida, and she said she might lose connection. So hopefully she can pop back in if she gets an opportunity. I think I'll try to see if I can.
I like your background, Akam. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah,
it's the chakras. Okay, I couldn't see them behind your head. That's cool.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite tapestries, and it just reminds me to always be centered. And I like the geometry around it, and the chakras. It got it
Some
all
sacred
going on.
Geometry. And
I realize that it kind of sits like a halo around me. So
it does.
Like, oh.
Yeah.
I like it.
I dig it
too. Yeah, well, I know
I'm in a little shed here, so it's all wood. It's all just 2x4s and plywood right now, so it makes me feel a little bit less concerned about my background.
There you go.
Yeah, I had a whole bunch of stuff up here with all my stuff I was writing, and I just took a picture and covered up some of it until I can get into a better space. But so I'm hoping a few more people are going to hop on. They don't have to start at the beginning. Hopefully they can just come in the middle if they need to. But if not, there were some questions that people had submitted, some things that maybe we could talk about today. And one of them was one that you, Stephanie, had asked about. And I think that was a really good question, something that's been on my mind. And I think that our limits, maybe even our limiting beliefs and blocks that we might have could be associated with where we're not sure where to hold those boundaries in the work that we do, and integrating, spirituality and things into the work that we do, because we have to adhere to our ethical guidelines and principles in our profession, and not even just in our profession, but just in, being a human being, being compassionate, being competent, being ethical in the work that we do. And so, did you have any chance to kind of prepare for today at all? Like what you might want to talk about, or answering that question at all? No,
I did not.
Okay.
The way that I kind of look at it is intention. I think vocabulary gets in the way a lot. And so I really watch words and the power of words. And I look what's behind the words. Because the words are cultural, right? The words are part of the core belief. The words are ingrained in you before you even know how you're speaking, right? And so, but what does it feel like? What's the intention behind what you're doing? What is the intention behind what your client is saying or doing?
Yeah, that's
So
good. Yep. Absolutely. Have you studied conscious language?
I know,
Yeah, there's a book out about that. I'm thinking about getting somebody recommended. I think
yeah.
it's conscious, unconscious language. I'm trying now. I can't remember what the name of the book is, but
No, a lot of stuff that comes to me just comes to me. And then I was like, okay, that's just your weirdness, Stephanie.
hey,
Yeah.
that's your intuition, and that's what we're here to talk about.
Right. I mean, and that's why I was so excited about this group, because I'm like, yay, a bunch of weirdos just like me, like that just receive information and you're like, okay, now what do we do with this? And am I alone? I'm not alone. Yeah.
You're not. Absolutely. And yeah, it's been a fascinating journey. And I think that when we are tapping into that intuition and we're centering ourselves in our session, and we're holding that intention for the session ahead of time, which, you know, a lot of times I forget to do, or I've forgotten to do, but when I do, and it really is allowing that your internal guidance to guide the session, to me, that's where a lot of magic seems to happen, the work that we do, honestly. So what do you have anything that you want to share in specific?
Well, I mean, one thing that I was doing, if I have time and I think about it, so I do like shamanic journeying for myself to answer questions that I might have, to just kind of tap into, if you want to look at the science part, like I'm tapping into subconscious or Eastern philosophy, I'm tapping into the higher power. So I was like, oh, could I do that for my clients, right? And so I was doing that for a little bit, and it was eerily accurate, because and then I was like, well, is this ethical? And I'm not asking to find out something that they don't want me to know, because I go in saying, you know, if there's something you don't want me to know, I won't be able to know it. Like, and so I'll just go in and ask, you know, is there anything that I should know about this client? And I'll get like 2 or 3 words, right? And at the time, they don't really make any sense until I see the client next in session. And I was like, oh, that totally makes sense now.
Exactly.
But I mean, I haven't done that for a while, because I was like, I don't know if I should be doing that, or
right,
that cross the line, you know?
Right, because that's what we were taught, you know, that we weren't taught those things in school. I mean, I don't know what your program taught you, but they didn't discuss.
Oh, no.
They didn't discuss these kind of things, you know. So, you know, from Occam, from your perspective, you know, you didn't come from this background and training of, you know, university, and it has to be this way, and so you're not tied to the expectations of the licensing guidelines and the standards.
Well, I mean, I did go to a clinical mental health 3-year program, but I went as like a non-traditional student after I had learned a bunch of other stuff. And so, yeah, they were telling me stuff, and I was like, yeah, well, that's one way to look at it, but really you're talking about first chakra trauma, you know, like, so I had like, and it was really hard to go through school that way. And sometimes I would speak up to the professors or whatever and be like, well, actually, if they would just kind of close down their heart chakra a little bit, then they would have stronger boundaries. And they were like, what are you talking about? And then it would just be dismissed, right? And so I was like, I just learned to zip it and just get through the classes. And then I was like, when I'm done, then
you can do it your own way.
I'll do what I want.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, I'm lucky in that regard. You know, even as I'm listening to you guys having to tiptoe around the lessons or the licensing, I'm really lucky in the fact that what I'm into has no bounds. Like there's no laws around it. There's no technicals around it. All I have to do is let people know that I'm not licensed. I'm not a doctor. I'm not here to prescribe, remedy, cure, diagnose, anything. I'm here only to give you energy and advice. And what I do is to tap in, to tap into that intuition. Like I really lean on that, like that intuition and that guidance from the other clients, multi-conscience, I call it, their guides, their ancestors, their elementals, their angelic beings, anything that they have with them. And like you said, in the Eastern, it would be the Akashic, and in the Western, it might be the subconscious. But when Becky and I were talking about it, is literally like how they talk about alternative medicine as if it's something new, when in all actuality, all these labels and restrictions they put on things and segregating things into, oh, this is mental health, this is physical health, this is emotional health. That's the new. That's what's new. That's what's alternative. Like if we look back at the grand scope of history, it was literally you couldn't treat a mental illness without addressing the emotional triggers. You couldn't address physical ailments without understanding the mental tags on that. And that's where the shaman and everything, they were able to tap into their intuition, into the guidance from their client or their patient, if you want to call it that, as well as their higher guides. And they got their guides from the plants and the animals and the weather, the stars, the way the moon was shining that particular night. They took all these intuitive guidance from that, and it allowed them the freedom to incorporate all things. And that's what I think is beautiful about this group, and what Becky's trying to do here is to bring in the coalition of everything. I think that we're moving out of a space and time where it's going to be either or, and it's going to be both and. It's not just mental health or emotional health, it's both. It's literally, we have to have an understanding of the fact that just because we learned something in a book does not mean that is the only way it is. But it does not mean that we should dismiss it, because what's in that book was developed by somebody who took their time, has their technical behind it. They have their case studies and whatnot, and they can prove that it works in a certain way. But even to say someone like either Freud or Carl was, or Jung was, either of them was totally right, is to completely negate the fact that both of them had right in them. And that if we can find the right space to meld them together, that's where we find the true potential for our future. And like I said, I guess in Reiki, I do remember asking when I got my Reiki practitioner, I said, what about when do we learn how to take the stuff out of the system? When do we learn how to do that psychic surgery stuff? And she was like, oh, we don't do psychic surgery. And then I took a class with the same lady, a different class, and she totally went into like disassociated thought forms and how you can remove them from the energy system. I was like, I thought you said we didn't do this. And she's like, no, in the class I was teaching about that particular framework, they don't do that. In this class around this framework, we do that. And so it really gave me this understanding of where you do have to walk that fine line, especially when people are trying to expect something from one place. Like you don't want to negate the tradition that they're expecting, whether it be yoga or Reiki or anything else. You have to say like, okay, this is what they taught in their lineage. And this is where I personally, and only me, have diverted it into this other realm. Now, if you appreciate that, and if that vibes with you, then join me in my branch of the river, so to speak. And I think that we can do that without tainting the original source or demanding that the original source change either. Respect it for what it is, manipulate and maneuver these things into one ultimate teaching or learning that we can all then utilize in multiple ways to create our own, because each one of us is, I believe, a creator of their own reality. And so the sessions I do, I literally have, no one has done it the way I do it because I've asked for it to be done differently. I'm not a very strong learner. I should say in the past, I have not been a very good book learner. And so for me, it has been a matter of what feels right and how can I ask the universe and how can I ask the client's body and energy system to be presented to me in a way that I can understand. And that's how it is. That's how it's presented to me. Somebody else may need it presented in a different way, may be able to interpret different things, whether it's throwing the bones or reading the tea leaves or doing astrology. There's just so many different ways to interpret the energy. And I think that by asking to interpret it a different way or have it shown to us in a different way, it will abide. It will do that for us. The creative force is in all of us, and we can utilize it in the way that you're doing with the yoga or the mental, anything across the board. I believe you can ask that it be malleable to your needs, and it's going to agree. Except for cats, they got their own minds. They do what they want.
Carrie, what's up? You want to unmute yourself? Hi.
Hello. Hi.
I see your kitty cat wants to be in the video.
He's knocking over my phone.
That is
I love it.
hilarious. I'm sure it's not an accident.
No.
Yes. How are you doing?
I'm good. I just, my daughter's birthday was today. She's 25. So we had a late lunch. She got out of work a little bit late for a late lunch. So I'm running a little bit late, but I'm glad you guys are still on and I can replay or watch the rest later.
Yeah, you didn't miss a whole bunch, and we were just really kind of getting started. But yeah, Akam was just we were talking about the ways that we feel limited in our ability to use our gifts and our intuitive gifts in the work that we do, and where that comes from. And you know, Akam didn't come from the same background that Stephanie and I did. And so he feels a little bit more open and to be able to like dive into that without any limitations against him. So that's awesome. So we're just sharing a little bit about that.
Cool.
So anyway, I'm glad that you could join us.
Yeah.
We had Lisa on here, and she's in Florida, and she's in the middle of a storm down there. So I think she lost power.
Oh my.
So hopefully she gets to join us again. But yeah, so I mean, I did a little bit of research. I wanted to be a little bit prepared for talking about some of the topics that were important to everyone. I didn't dive in too deep, but you know, I was trying to look at some treatment models that really embodied some of the spiritual aspects of healing as well. And I know there's a few. I know that I posted something on our group about internal family systems model, and I really like that one. That's one that I found when I was really searching for something to be able to use, even just for myself, just to kind of understand, you know, how we can bring in that self energy and spirituality into understanding the different parts of ourselves. So that model was really helpful for me when I was going through grief and understanding and forgiving the people in my life that I've had a hard time with, like my father and my sister, you know, with their alcohol and just our relationships in general. And so it really assisted me through a lot of that process. And so I posted some information about that in our group. And then what else did I find?
There's a really nice book. It's like a picture book, which I like because I'm visual, by Thomas Holm, called Parts Work. And that's from that internal family systems framework. But it talks about, and really, if you're looking at the Easter side, it's just pieces of the soul that have been abandoned, right? And then he also has like a little deck of cards that's really nice artwork that clients can leaf through and just kind of whatever speaks to them.
Cool.
And that kind of goes along with a whole kind of soul retrieval type thing, but like instead you're calling it, you know, different parts of the self,
Mhm.
you know, outside of the self that is.
Right.
And
The wounded
Yeah.
parts, the manager parts, the firefighters,
Right.
you know, all those parts. Yep. And a side note, looking at internal family systems model has really made me look at multiple personality disorder in a completely different way, because I think we're all multiples, and I think it's all normal. Like, but it's totally been made to be pathological to have parts and to have multiple personalities. But you know, it's also inner child work that we do. We have all those parts of us that are inside that, you know, that have been there since the day we came into this world. And then you also have other things like walk-ins and different things that, you know, I don't completely understand yet, but I know that there's the potential of all, you know, Occam's nodding his head. He's probably had some experiences with some of that in some of his sessions, right? You know, sounds
psychic attacks.
Definitely.
psychic attacks, takeovers.
Yeah, not on me, but definitely clients that have dealt with ancestral stuff is a big thing that's come up this year. Dealing with ancestral lineage and having energies come in from family members that have passed and trying to finish up past work. So there's so many different aspects to it for sure.
Yes, definitely. So you said that book is called Parts Work?
Mhm.
Okay, I'm gonna look at that because I really like IFS. I thought about maybe going and
And
getting.
the deck of cards is really nice too, because it provides some visuals when there's no words.
Yes,
Yeah,
because words get in the way.
do.
Sometimes it's in the way for sure. So I was looking at positive psychology. I was looking at humanistic theory, and positive psychology is really the scientific study of what makes life most worth living. And I mean, that's nothing new, but humanistic theory is about, it stresses the ultimate good of humans and their potential, creativity, health, hope, meaning, connection, purpose, and ability to reach self-actualization, or for individuals to achieve their full potential. And there's some core values that are included there, but, and again, let's see what else. Then I also read something about the biopsychosocial spiritual model, and that's something that they're looking at including, it used to always be called the biopsychosocial model, and they're adding perhaps the spiritual piece to that. And I think I included some information about that in the group as well, just for people to read if they want that as a resource. And that's just, like I said, coming from the psychology, kind of background and perspective. I would like to know, Carrie, you're a certified health coach, right?
Yep.
Can you tell us, like, based on the training that you've received as a health coach, how do they address, spirituality and energy work into what you guys do? And are there any ethical guidelines that you're given around that piece at all?
Not really ethical guidelines. I mean, when I first started my training, it was very woo. I was like, okay, these people are so weird. They're really kind of out there. A lot of the things they were talking about seemed really strange to me. So it was all new. I was coming from a corporate environment, and the school's based in California. They're just and Chicago, and so they are just they just came from a different space and talked in ways that no one else I'd ever really heard anyone talk before. So a lot of the things I thought were really weird, then I'm starting to get around people who are talking a lot of the same way. So it is a lot about energy. Some of the coaches, use cards. There's just a lot of different things that they do. And so really the school that I did was kind of the entry level, just becoming a health coach. And then they have additional education that you can do to add on to that to deepen your training. But really, they really did talk about taking people on journeys to continue to look inside and to find themselves, and encouraged us using different modalities in our coaching that we were attracted to or drawn to or liked. So it's very open. There's kind of a basic structure to just kind of the coaching modality, but really it's just completely encouraged to bring every little thing that you might find, that you like or that you're drawn to into your coaching practice. So, the only things that from an ethics perspective, we're not nutritionalists, we're not, certified fitness trainers, we are not, doctors, obviously, or therapists. So, we need to make sure that we're not giving a lot of advice, but most of health coaching training is just giving you tools to help people navigate through and dig deeper. Really, I guess in just a really simple term is what they really taught us how to do. We're not giving a lot of advice. We're not, it's just a lot of just different methods to continue to try to, get people to really look inside and figure out what's going on and what they want and stuff like that. So I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah, no, totally. No, that totally makes sense. I like that because it's really just giving them the guidance to find the inner gifts and inner strength that they have to heal themselves is really what
right,
sounds like.
exactly.
Instead of being like, well, I'm the expert. And I mean, there's so much of that in the profession, in my opinion, just psychology and therapy and counseling. It's just, I know, and you come to me because I'm the expert. Well, no, you are the expert. Each person is the expert of their own experience and their own journey. And so, yeah.
So it's really about support, accountability, but with tons of love and kindness and encouragement. None of this hardcore, just it's just a really gentle method of just kind of helping people, bust through roadblocks, look within, figure out what the heck's going on, what do they want, and just really, guiding, helping them just kind of navigate. But it's really mostly them, so.
Right.
Kind of like you decided to just walk alongside them on the trail for a little while.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. And what I find is that there aren't a lot of people who really give a crap, about other people. And so sometimes just having that someone to talk to who just really gives a crap, that matters to people. And so, unfortunately, I mean, it's sad to say, and, now that people are even more, we've kind of detached from each other a little bit. And I think there's just going to be more and more need for that.
Well, we've detached from ourselves. So many people have become so detached from themselves and have stopped trusting their own guidance system, and they just have learned to ignore that. So I think that if you can't trust yourself and you're disconnected from yourself, how can you connect other people? And the messages that we keep getting everywhere around us is division, division, division. We're different. There's hate. There's, there's so much division and separation going on. So there's a lot of healing that needs to happen on an individual basis, but then also on a collective basis too, for sure.
Yes.
And it all, like, again, I'll just say the message for me right now is to point us back to ourselves, is that each of us in this, who are being guided to help others facilitate healing, to be a coach, to be a therapist, whatever we are here to do, to be a healer, that if we're being guided to do that, that we really need to do the work on ourselves. And that's the most important piece, because that's going to help our people that we help. That's going to help them even more, being able to come from a place of neutrality and no judgment. And so that, being triggered by something the person is saying, the countertransference and transference process I talked about before, I think that that's really valuable information to use on a personal level as a therapist. For me, when that comes up in a session with a client and I'm like, ooh, I had some judgment about that, or that's bringing something up for me, to then take the responsibility after that session and do something with that information, instead of just, oh, okay, here's your bill, pay, and I'll see you next week, and then completely forgetting about it, because then all that just continues to pile up inside. And I don't know, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity, I think, that gets missed quite often. But do you think that there are any, do you feel like the training that you get as a coach is, gives you the tools that you feel like you really need, or do you feel like there's something missing from the coaching profession? Because I definitely feel like there's things missing from the clinical profession, as a therapist at least, that we haven't been given through our training, that could definitely make us better at what we do. I don't know if you feel that way.
I do think that there are a lot of different tools. Like I said, there's other, there's more deeper training that you can do. They are constantly, it's just like, grad school or whatever it is, whether you want to continue on. I think the course that I took, you definitely have tools to get started. And anytime they make improvements, that if it was an improvement to the program I took, I have access to all the improvements without repurchasing. So I think it just depends. I mean, I think that they set you up really well. They also do like marketing training, business. They don't just, educate you on, they try to educate you on everything that they can to help you be successful. But I think that one of the things you were, just talking about, that is even as you're going through that, I learned a lot about myself. It was way different than anything I'd been exposed to here in the Midwest, right? And so as I went through it, it was a real growth opportunity for me. I learned a lot. And, I still think I'm kind of reflecting on that and trying to figure that out a little bit because I've had a few, triggers and things that have happened over the past year or so. But yeah, I think it was really good. It's definitely tools that you can use. And if you have, something that you feel really passionate about or a niche market that you really want to dive into and start supporting and helping, I think you definitely have all the tools that you would need to do that. So,
Okay,
but they do a lot of things that are kind of script based. And so unless you are really inclined to connect with people, then you can't just use scripts all the time, right? So it's a guidance and it's a teaching. By using these scripts, you're learning a lot about the modality of the coaching. But if you can't really adapt to just connecting and kind of taking what you're learning and navigating through that on your own, then it's probably not helpful at all. So it kind of depends on the person too, right?
true. That's true. Yeah, and I mean, we have continuing education. We have to get continuing education credits and training and stuff as well. But you go to graduate school and then you get your degree and then they're like, bye, we're done. So, there's no more support there from the school, but certainly it's up to us to decide if we want to go and get the additional training that we want. And
Right.
yeah, so okay. Well, I was just curious about that. Anybody have-
Carrie, are you related to a Bev Sokup?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, that's my husband's name. His dad has like 13 brothers and sisters, so it's a big family. But
Okay.
I've never heard of Bev. No.
And Carrie is in
I think
Nebraska, right?
Second on,
hmm
Go ahead, Akam.
oh, I was just saying I could second on what Carrie was saying. I'm actually in a course now as well, a coaching course. That's actually where Becky and I met, to further my ability to take what I do in a single session and turn it into more of a coachable modality. And I agree that what they really focus on is clearing you, and especially the one I'm in is really about doing the soul trauma work and clearing you and getting you to your highest self so that you can just be a guide. Like no one, myself particular, I had the background of abuse, the sexual abuse and the drug abuse. And so that's who my niche is. That's somebody who I'm going to be able to help. I may not be able to help somebody as well as I could as somebody else. Let me say that again. I may be able to help somebody who's been sober their whole life may not be able to handle an alcoholic or a drug, someone recovering from drugs, because that's the path I've been down. And so that's who I can help out of that path. I have the experience. That's where I'm an expert. I didn't get my expertise from a licensing accredited school. My expertise is in surviving abuse and surviving my own trauma and transmuting my own trauma. And so where the life coach, I think, differs is that each person, though they may have their own training, they are actually going to be affecting a different group of people, whoever resonates with them, whoever their story, whoever they're telling their story to. And I think that it's really great in that regard. I personally have been doing even more work on myself than I ever have. I just found out that I actually may be codependent, and that's where a lot of my addictions and stuff came in. And I'd only heard the word codependent in loose terms recently, and then come to find out here, yeah, it's one of my issues. So I'm really excited to delve into that and work through that myself. So the next time I have a client, I'm going to be able to help them out of that woods too, or out of that hole, whatever you want to call it. And so I think that the life coaching, if anybody, even with someone with the technical training, could do life coaching, because you have a life, you've had a life, you've had experiences, you've had partners, you've had children, you've had jobs that you've had to deal with, bosses you've had to deal with. So I really like the idea that anybody could be a life coach, because everybody's had a life. And if you find the right program that gives you that guidelines and those scripts that you can then see like, oh, this is how that works, and this is how I worked that it can be really beneficial. And so, yeah, I like that. And I also want to revisit the ethics part of what we were talking about earlier, as far as where does the ethics go, as far as how far down the rabbit hole can you go, because you guys are in the kind of the loophole or the pigeonhole of the technical label. I think that as long as you're ethically, conducting yourself with the base ethics of like do no harm, respect people's privacy, respect where people are coming from, and not putting your opinions on their situations, and not accessing somebody's energy that hasn't requested it. I think that that's really the base ethics that everybody could go by. And that would be the best thing I would say as far as ethics is just like do no harm, ultimate respect, and definitely see the difference between your opinions and their situations lie where that line is. That's what I would say about that.
Yeah. It's a good place to start for sure.
I'm gonna have to sign off in the next couple minutes because I gotta go pick up my daughter. But
Okay. Thanks for letting us
It's
know.
nice to meet you.
Yeah.
yeah, nice to meet you guys too.
Well, I'll just kind of like briefly go over, because I think this was something, one of your questions, Stephanie, was about ethics. And I know somebody had posted, oh, somebody's joining us. David's joining us. Okay. Somebody had posted the question, actually, yeah, it was you, Stephanie, about the boundaries. How far can we push the boundaries, the modality? So I was looking at the social work code of ethics, and I looked at some of the ethical principles and the value of integrity and the ethical principle of social workers behaving in a trustworthy manner, taking measures to care for themselves professionally and personally. So that part was a big aspect of that, which I just kind of talked about. It's just taking the responsibility personally to work on your own stuff. Hi, David. And act honestly and responsibly and promote ethical practices on the part of the organizations with which they are affiliated. Another one is competence, practicing within the area of competence and develop and enhance your professional expertise. So continually to strive to increase your professional knowledge and skills and to apply them in practice. That social workers should aspire to contribute to the knowledge base of the profession and also to the communities and greater society. Social workers should provide services and represent themselves as competent only within the boundaries of their education, training, license, certification, consultation received, supervised experience, or other relevant professional experience. So I got some, to say about that. Well, I've had some shamanic training. So, I mean, does that mean it's okay to do that? Anyway, looking more into the rest of this, the social workers should provide services and represent themselves as competent. Okay, wait a minute, I already talked about that. Okay, hold on here. Should provide services in substantive areas or use intervention techniques or approaches that are new to them only after engaging in appropriate study, training, consultation, supervision from people who are competent in those interventions or techniques. When generally recognized standards do not exist with respect to an emerging area of practice, social workers should exercise careful judgment and take responsible steps to ensure the competence of their work and to protect clients from harm. And then it just talks about cultural competence and being able to demonstrate an understanding of the nature of social diversity and oppression with respect to race, ethnicity, national origin, color, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, age, marital status, political belief, religion, immigration status, and mental or psychic ability, physical ability. So, and then the last part is competence that I highlighted from our code. Social workers should base practice on recognized knowledge, including empirically based knowledge relevant to social work and social work ethics. So that's the thing that I kind of go back to, is like that empirically based knowledge and using evidence-based treatment models only. And it's like, who's actually doing research on this stuff? I don't know that there's a lot of information out there about that. So, especially when you look at Reiki, there was this one article that I shared. I think I shared it with the group in one of the guides. I created guides, by the way, so we can start organizing some of this information so that, okay, Stephanie, you'll see ya. Thanks for being here. Let's keep in touch. So anyway, yeah, well, anyway, so yeah, the empirically based knowledge. Oh, let's see here. Yeah, so I think I shared an article about that in the group. And it was looking at Reiki. It said Reiki and psychotherapy and combining that in your treatment. And it said something about Reiki being, questionable, the use of energy work in session is questionable or something like that. I forget what the exact wording was. So, there's controversy around that in some places. I don't have any controversy with it because, yeah, I mean, I know it works, and I know it's effective, and that it's something that we can definitely apply to the work that we do. So do you want to say something,
I
Akam?
think there's religious controversy as well. There's just a lot of religious controversy about it as well. I mean, some people think that if you pick up a deck of cards, you're hailing Satan,
Right.
So, I mean, there's all kinds of different levels. Like I just had a conversation. It was actually a really constructive conversation. It was really great. An older couple who I asked them if they were interested in Reiki, and they said, "Oh no, I'm Christian." And it's like, well, yeah, so am I. And like, oh no, I believe that only Christ has the power to save. And I was like, well, so do I. I just happen to believe that Christ resides within me. And
Exactly.
so there's just a beautiful conversation
David's
about.
over there laughing. Yeah.
I know David's gonna like that one. So it's just the difference in that, and I think that there is some of that with psychotherapy too. Like I remember being in psychotherapy when I was younger, and there was no talk of the God. It was literally like there's just so many divides, and this goes back into either you can be this and this and this, but you're not going to address your cultural beliefs, your religious beliefs, and whatnot. How can you possibly treat somebody's mental health or emotional health or physical health without addressing where their belief systems lie and being applicable to that, and not saying, well, like, if you don't believe what I believe, then you are wrong. I think that we're, like I said, we're in this time of where it's both and so if we can find the space between, instead of focusing on what's different about our beliefs, what's the same about our beliefs, what is, and I think that might have something to do with, as far as like, why would Reiki be a negative aspect in psychotherapy if you're trying to channel in energy to, like, how, obviously David and I will tell you all about how you're not going to be able to heal a heartache unless you bring energy into the heart chakra. And if your throat chakra is all closed down, you're not going to be able to speak your truth, and like, so yeah, you could berate somebody for 10 hours, over several sessions, trying to get them to find their own voice and speak their own mind. Or you could add some energy to their system, and assist them the same way you would offer them some sort of antipsychotic to help neutralize a certain hormone or a certain chemical that would allow them to think clear. Instead, just do it naturally through this energetic work, this ancient tradition of ways that have been used for thousands and thousands of years with absolutely no side effect other than healing and healing adjacent effects, So yeah, I get all funny about that, but it is one of those things, like, why would Reiki be drawn down? I could understand not wanting to bring plant medicines in, and sure, not everybody can handle a psychedelic trip to deal with childhood traumas. So those are some things that, like, should be held accountable for certain circumstances. But man, Reiki is just such an amazing thing, and it's just as easy as using your intention and intuition to help guide you through those different systems and bring in extra energy. Who couldn't use some extra energy, especially when
Right.
you're dealing with childhood trauma?
Exactly. I totally agree. Thanks for sharing that. Definitely. I think it's just about educating people, and giving people permission to kind of think outside of their belief system and think outside of the box without fear. Because I think being in that box is what makes people feel very safe and secure. And unfortunately, a lot of the answers are outside of that box. And so if we could just, give people permission to be able to step outside of that a little bit and just take a look at that a little bit differently, and realize that, Reiki is kind of like prayer. It's like, what do you think happens when you pray for somebody? Where do you think that energy is coming from? It's the same thing. The person who's praying is channeling that energy and directing it from their heart and love, right, towards that other person, right? Well, can you measure that? Can you see it? You can't cut that. Just like you can't open up the heart and find love, but we know it exists, and it's an energy, and there's a vibration from that. So,
And luckily the tools are coming around. We're getting these different spectrographic pictures where you can see the energy body, and you can see the energy that remains when an arm is amputated, or you can see how water is charged with a particular emotion, and then the crystals form a different way. I equate it literally to the microscope age. Before, no one understood that you had to wash your hands because there were these little tiny microbes in this other realm of reality that were so small they were unseen to us until they got the right tools. And I feel that same way about the macrocosm, the microcosm, the quantum realm. The quantum realm is like a whole nother dimension that they are now understanding the relationship between energy and physical matter and potential matter. So I think that this next decade or two, we're going to really see a breaking down of that box, especially because of what we're dealing with now as a society and the fear and the medical establishment being, potentially called to task. And people are ready to reach out and see other things and experience things in different ways. And the science is there to back it now. And so I think that in the future, it's going to be both and. It'll be both and.
I hope so. That's what I hope. David, do you have anything to add? Or you want to share anything about this discussion at all? I don't know if you weren't raising your hand, but.
Oh, well, I'm kind of in the, caught in the middle, but I caught this discussion in the middle. But hey, by the way, hi, Oakham. It's nice to see you. I just, I know that doing therapy is a form of energy work in a way, because, there is the deepening and there's a release. So Reiki just kind of goes from it in a nonverbal way of being able to soothe those energies and give that person enough safety to let go of whatever might be part of the problem. But that's not as deep as what the therapy is going to do. But at the same time, I can see totally how letting go of some of these deep emotions can help with the therapy. So the two can go hand in hand. But the one question, about that, I mean, as far as therapies go, is to me just like, because I know that they're like, we were talking earlier, Becky, about that, is, like some places don't allow touch by the therapist or by that type of therapist, whereas like even like a coach, you can get your coaching, which if you've got a background in some type of therapy as doctorate in therapy, I mean, you could be doing that, but when it comes to psychotherapy, you're not allowed to touch, and I understand there's maybe a safety because of the that whole thing about where the person that is the therapist might have an authority over the
Yes.
person that's receiving. So that would be my only thing, just making sure everything that somebody that does something like Reiki isn't manipulating as a doctor or as a therapist. But that can go with anything. I mean, that can go with regular, like I have to always, of course, be sure to keep everything on the up and up. I mean, that's just how it is. So it's just making sure, I guess, the people doing it have the standards and are okay with it.
Yeah, I agree. I think at the basic level, I think we need to give informed consent, right? We need to let people know what to expect. We need to, think about what our expertise is, and not just like go read a book and be like, hey, anybody want to like try this new thing, but, really developing that skill and that tool and practicing, whether that be practicing with colleagues, and friends or someone that may be willing to give you some feedback until you hone in on that skill. And then, starting where the client is at too. And I mentioned that earlier. It's just like being where the client is at. So if you know that this person is looking for some support and guidance, and that they're a Christian, you're not going to come in and be like, hey, I got these Akashic records and I got all this stuff going on. We have to, and I need to remember to do that too, because I remember I went to get some energy work done, like maybe about 6 years ago. And the guy's like, well, you can ask me any question you want. And I didn't know what to ask. And I was like, well, I don't know what to ask. And I said, is there any feedback you have for me? He said, well, do you know what 5D means? And I'm like, no. He goes, okay. So since I didn't know what 5D was, he wasn't going to go into a huge discussion about the fifth dimension with me in that short period of time that we were together. And I look back with that and I really respected, have some respect for him for not taking me to a place that I wasn't ready yet. Like we have to maybe pace our clients a little bit better. And like I said, just start where they are and ask the questions and be a little bit more gentle about how we approach some of these things that are really, really outside of their belief system at the time. So I also think it's really important to remember that that doesn't mean that you can't still be in your truth and still use your gifts and use them to help guide your session, but really tap into your intuition and know what that client needs at that time without like wanting, and maybe they need this big release. Maybe they need this big energy, process, but maybe it's not time for them quite yet. Maybe they need a little bit more grounding and maybe they need a little more balance in their life before we decide to like do that. So I don't know, it's just something that just came to me that just to think about. And what was the other thing I was going to say?
Well, in the meantime, one other thing too would be just to make sure that if you're doing a session on somebody, that you're comfortable with doing the session on somebody, because they can pick up. If you don't feel comfortable in doing it, then I'd suggest not doing it.
Right.
It's important to be authoritative, be strong within it. Otherwise,
Yes. And being honest. I have found that I've had the most, I've connected with my clients on a much deeper level when I've been really honest about my own limitations as a therapist for them. I had someone in the very beginning when I first started working with multiple personality disorder. At the time, I didn't have experience, but I was I was working in trauma, and so when you're working with people who have severe trauma and trauma history, that is going to come up. You're going to come up with people who have come with a diagnosis like that. I didn't diagnose any of my clients with that disorder. They call it dissociative identity disorder now, but it's very complex, and it's one of the most complex cases that, they're not cases, people or conditions that you can work with. And I was kind of scared to do that at first. I wasn't prepared. I'd had some advanced training in EMDR and some other modalities. And so this person called me and they're like, hey, I'm moving to the area and I have this diagnosis. Would you work with me? And I'm like, I don't have any experience with that specific diagnosis. And this person said, well, you know what? Like, I can't find anybody that will work with me. And you have the EMDR training and all this stuff. And she's like, I think the fact, she said, it's more important for me to have the relationship with you, to have a good relationship with my therapist than it is for you to have that experience. I'm like, oh gosh. So of course I got supervision. I paid for supervision to have somebody, help me with that process. But I told her, I said, okay. I was like, but we both got to be really honest with each other. You need to be honest with me if you feel that you're not getting your needs met, and if you feel like I'm not the right therapist for you, we need to look for someone who would be a better fit for you. And I need to be honest with you about my own limitations. If I feel like I'm in uncharted territory that I can't handle, I want to be honest, because I didn't want to bring any harm to her. So it was really kind of magical how our relationship started from that point. So I just say this just as an example of how we can be really honest about our limitations and not feel bad about that, and to not pretend to be the expert in a certain area. And maybe that client came to you for a reason, is to help you deepen your knowledge base and your experience with that population, because maybe you're meant to. Maybe I didn't go out and seek those type of clients, and they started just to come to me. And I feel like when, you know, that's kind of what happens in this world, you know, the right people just start to come to you. And you don't sometimes know what you're, you know, what's going to happen or what you're doing, but that can happen. So, yeah, I think, yeah, just being honest with our clients in that situation. If it's not a good fit, you know, how do we do that in a way that still honors that person and doesn't create a feeling of separation and rejection and things like that. So it's a teachable moment that I think sometimes people get uncomfortable with and maybe avoid doing. But when you can face that fear and be really honest, I think that can be really helpful on both ends. So, yeah, like, I don't know. Is there anything else anybody wants to talk about? We've been going on here for about an hour and maybe have another 5 minutes or so. We can talk. Carrie, did you want to have anything you had to add in that discussion? Or anybody, Malcolm?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. I think what you said about being honest was really important, you know, and meeting the client where they are is another thing, and meeting yourself where you are. Like, you could do so much harm. Like, I equate it to trying to rebuild an engine if you don't know how. You know, if you don't know where to start and you get in over your head, you're just better off passing it off to somebody else. You know, if you can't, and like I said, it's why I really stick within my realm of my particular expertise is what I know. If someone comes to me and they're trying to do something, I'm like, I just don't know. I've never done that before. If you want to work through this with me and you want to get there, we can try. We can see what I have to offer you is applicable to that particular scenario. But being honest with yourself and your client is really not only in the moment of what you're capable of, but in the moment of the session and holding them in true honesty and true acknowledgement and non-judgment. Those are all going to get you really far when you're leaning into intuition.
Yes, and I think that another thing that I would add to that, that's all true, is that, and if it's not the right timing, you know, if you're honest and they see you as a person of integrity, they're going to come back to you when they are ready. You know, and you leave that door
Absolutely.
open, you let them know when you're ready, you know, or you may even say, like, maybe you could recommend a book or something that they read or some other things to kind of get themselves prepared, you know, to be able to do some of the deeper work that they're not ready for yet. So, yeah.
And I definitely love a co-op like this, where it's like, that's something that, you know, like I can meet somebody where they are and really, like you said, hold off on the 5D ancestral lineage kind of really stuff that might spook some people out and just meet them where they are and just give them an energy session.
Right.
But it's better for me to recommend them to somebody else that might be right up their alley, you know, and don't hesitate to share the love as far as that goes. Don't feel like you're going to lose a customer just because you're not what they need. Like, help other people. Like, if I have somebody who I know is like a nutritionalist or something, and I see that there's more of a nutritional issue, I'm more than happy to pass them off before I'll pretend that I know what, you know, nutritional needs they have. And I think that's really important too, is knowing where you are and knowing where what you don't have is, knowing how to find what you can't offer. And that's really valuable to clients as well.
Yes. Definitely. Did you have something to say, Carrie?
Not really,
No?
no.
Okay.
Just, it's really interesting. I mean, not coming from a therapy background, it's interesting. So I'm learning a lot.
Well, that's the thing is, I really feel like coming from a therapy background, I have a lot to learn from you and all three, I mean, all of you. And we all have a different piece of the puzzle, you know? And I think that if we can bring all of our pieces of the puzzle together, like just imagine the puzzle, what the puzzles and the picture's gonna look like. Imagine if we bring all of our threads together, what the tapestry would look like and what we could really offer to people, you know, for help. And knowing, you know, maybe, you know, and as a therapist, you know, one of the things that we do in our very first session, you know, we don't just jump into healing, of course, or treatment, is we spend the first session doing kind of an evaluation and assessing where they're at, where are you at with your, your family and your health and your job and your relationships and spirituality, and you like kind of look at all these things, and then you come up with a treatment plan of how we're going to, what you want to achieve, and in what time frame, what treatment models are we going to use, and how long is that going to possibly take. So we kind of do that in the beginning. And then you build rapport. So you don't just jump into working on trauma work in our perspective, because we're going in it a completely different way. I believe that there's value in doing it both ways. I believe that we need to get to working on some things much quicker, because people lose interest in coming to session after session after session after session. I believe that there's got to be a way for us to be able to incorporate all these tools and to more quickly get people to where they need to be. And so, therapy traditionally has been about focusing on the past and trauma and digging. Well, it's painful. People don't want to sit there and talk about that all day long, and talk therapy, going on and on and on and talking about stuff. Yes, it's helpful to be processing things. And for someone like me, who's an external processor, having somebody to talk to as a sounding board is a way for me to hear the words coming out of my mouth. Okay. So when I can hear the words come out of my mouth, it helps me organize it. It's a different energy to it. It's like, it takes what's inside of me that's implicit and it makes it explicit. And now it's like, oh, that's what I felt, So, there's value in that, but going on and on and on and on about talk therapy, I think that there's probably more things that we could do to help people get through and process quickly. So,
And that's one of the things that's kind of been a challenge with being a coach, is that, what if you stumble across, sometimes coaching can feel like a Band-Aid because you're looking forward, right? And so, therapy again is looking back and trying to kind of assist and work through some of those issues. But sometimes, coaching can feel just like putting a Band-Aid on something, that there's still some things that need to be resolved that could benefit from therapy. And so I guess that kind of does remind me that ethics piece of it is to make sure that we're not acting as therapists, and that we are, referring or encouraging people, or able to try to identify when people may need therapy. So that just kind of stirred up a whole new bunch of thoughts in my brain. So
good. I like stirring up thoughts.
mhm.
But yeah, because coaching is more focused on where you're at now and where you want to be and how do we get there, right? Mindset, mindfulness, right? Affirmations, action oriented, right?
It's interesting because we do a kind of an analysis too of, it's kind of called the Wheel of Life, where they basically rate where they're at, where you're at in your faith, it's the same process, right?
Yeah.
And then you're building rapport with them, and then you kind of start heading down that path. So it's interesting.
Isn't it interesting how one only focuses on the past and one only focuses on the future? And that's what I want to do. I want to bridge that. Like, we need to bring those together and then have the energy work as a part of that and create this just shorter process of helping people get there. So if you do an assessment of someone and asking them questions in the very beginning about their knowledge of 5D, their knowledge of their, higher self and their guides, or what do you know? You could find out where they are, and you can help them where they are. So if they need, so there's got to be. So yeah, this is helping me come up with some ideas too.
Well, and then too, what's so nice is if you have a community, kind of like what you've brought together for a lot of different reasons, but if you have a community of people, then, I know a therapist who also believes in all these other things, well, maybe if you talk to Becky, she could help you with this or that, because I really can't, instead of sending them off to some therapist, right, who may not be able to look at treating that whole person and helping that whole person heal. It's like everyone has a little piece of the puzzle too, and can kind of help as a community support this person, instead of sending them off to strangers who may not believe in some of the other philosophies they're believing in. So there's that whole aspect of it too,
Exactly. Yeah. I was trained in this one model that integrates family therapy and attachment work with EMDR. So a lot of these kids, they were children that had attachment disorders, and a lot of them were adopted in the foster care system. And so you would work with the parents and the kids. So they would come in and they would work with the family therapist and they would work on things, right? And then they go to the next room and they do the next session with the EMDR therapist. So all the breakthroughs that they had in family therapy, you go into EMDR and you process using the bilateral stimulation in the left and right hemisphere of the brain, and you anchor in the positive, I'm just trying to remember. I haven't used the EMDR in a while. It's so any of like the aha moments that came through in those sessions, the growth, the opportunities of, oh well, I am loved. I am loved by my parents. You take that over to the EMDR therapist and they anchor that. So what you're doing is you're like rewriting, you're creating those neuro pathways. You're recreating those neural pathways. I am loved, not that I am unloved. So what if you had that set up where you can do, you can meet with one person and do this, and then you have EMDR, and then maybe even somebody in the room is doing energy work at this, the same time. You do,
Right.
just imagine, so yeah, I love
Yeah.
it. I think someday it's gonna
You're
happen.
literally talking about the goal. Yeah. You're laying out the goal right there, is to get it to where someone could go through and hit the different aspects, mental, emotional, physical, on all aspects. And I mean, throw in some acupuncture and massage work too, get it out of the
Yoga.
tissue. All
Colonic
levels, the yoga.
chiropractor, to get that neurological,
you know,
all that nerves, all of that, and that work.
Yep, the
Yeah.
nerve. Mhm.
So you guys are feeling it,
We
right?
need it all inclusive. Sign
Good.
me up. I'm there.
All right, well, we got to start working on it. We have our work cut out for us.
Well, and just think about it, Becky, if we could get this figured out, we could replicate this in locations all over the country, right?
That's what yeah, exactly. We've all been interested. It seems like everyone that I've talked to so far is really interested in having wellness centers, healing centers, community centers all over the country, maybe even like all over the world. If we can duplicate that, if we can duplicate this model and we can train other people, train other professionals to be prepared to understand, the overlap and where the gaps are, and, being ethical, but also, it's starting where the client is, there's just all those things, how do we assess for what they need, without like just diving into stuff and, putting our programs on them and that we don't realize we're doing, but yeah.
Well,
But
and
that's
this-
back to-
I was just going to say this past year and a half, is going to contribute to the mistrust of, potentially the medical profession in general. And people are going to be seeking out exactly the things we're talking about to create true wellness within their lives and their families.
Absolutely. I hope so. I mean, I don't hope that there's mistrust. I just hope that people.
I don't either. I think that it will be, that we are getting to a time where maybe someone we talked to as a health coach, someone I talked to 2 years ago about some of these things, may be more open to it now because they've started to have a little bit of, mistrust in the systems that we currently see as health,
Yeah,
and looking at alternate systems for
exactly.
health. Yeah.
And
I think all authority systems are in question right now, and that's really gonna drive the wedge into where is the money made, where is the policies being made, and how can we get back to the ancient traditions that don't have a patent on them?
yes, I like that. Ancient
Mhm.
ways. Mm-hmm. Got a nice ring to it, but yeah. Yeah, well, let's keep talking. Let's keep doing our work and be inspired, be motivated. The world needs all of us, and it takes a whole village, right?
Right.
And so it has to start with us. And so the best piece of advice I could give to everybody that's in the line of work that we're all in, of helping other people and helping humanity, is do the work on yourself. It's time now. Don't put it off, and that has to be a priority. And maybe you already are, whatever, it's fine. I'm not saying you're not. I'm just saying, I know that that's really important because we have to be that clear vessel for the people that we help. And that's going to be the most important thing, is that we are clear. And then we can help all those the parents, and hopefully the ones that haven't even had children yet. Imagine if we can help them clear their ancestral trauma and their this lifetime, the trauma they've had in this lifetime. And then, you know, the children that they're going to be birthing into the new world. And this, imagine, you know, I'm also thinking about that, you know, I've got a son in the Air Force, and I'm going to have grandchildren one day, and I want to create a better world for them. You know, I don't want to leave this world the way it is right now, because it's really depressing. It really is. So, but there's beauty all around us, and have to keep our eye on the prize. So anyway, any last words from anybody? Anybody have anything to say?
Just that I have hope. I have high hopes. I have really high hopes. You know, I think that it's darkest before the dawn, and us coming together, the Great Awakening, everything that's happening right now. I refuse to let it bring me down, and I hope that it doesn't bring anybody else down, because this is the first step into something new. Like changing what we changed over the last couple of years. No one would have thought that big a change was possible that fast. And it was for something, you know, slightly negative and unfortunate and lots of death around it, but it does not mean that we can't change just as big, just as far a swing the other direction and more. You know, if we can all come together to wear masks and protect everybody, we can also come together to build a community that holds each and every person in value and meets the lowest of needs amongst all people. And I just don't think that we're going to ever go back to the old normal. The new normal is something that we've never experienced before, and it's time for this planet to really excel and become the place of health and wealth that it's supposed to be, prosperity and abundance.
Yeah, and we have to create it. So we have to keep our eyes on what it is that we want to create and what we want this new world to be, and not focus on what it isn't yet or what it hasn't been before. So that's what, you know, I just have to keep focused on that. Some people say to me, well, you know, you can't just have your head in the sand and ignore everything that's happening in the world. But you know what? I can't, because, you know, it's not good for my energy. And I think I'm here to bring in something different. So I'm trying to keep focused on the positive and the beauty in the world and making a difference and making a change. So.
And your head's not in the sand, because you know what you know. You don't have to see and read the details every single day, right? You know what you know.
I already know. I don't need to know anymore.
Your head's not in the sand. You just don't want to relive it every single day, right?
Exactly.
Right. That's right.
Right.
Not ignorance, it's providence. You're seeing forward. Right. You're not ignoring. You're just changing.
It's okay. Yeah. That's just projection. You know, it's just cancel culture. You know, projection and all that good stuff that happens around us. So.
Right now, there are so many illusions that are in front of our faces that the realities of what's brought to us isn't really true. So what we really need to do as a society at this point and as people is just to foresee the future, to bring the future in, and not dwell on what may or may not be actually happening. Which there's so much false information out there. We have to really just find our own truth. Just like the false information that stuff like energy work isn't, you know, valid. You know, it's like we know for ourselves that it is good.
Yes, exactly. Well, how often would you guys like to have these discussions as a group? Do you think would help? How often?
Well, I can make as many as I can. You know, my schedule can change week to week.
Should we do this once a month or sooner?
Yeah. I think once a month's probably a good start.
I
think that would actually be
nice.
At least once a month? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if you do some more than one, I could, like, if you if I put it in a schedule, I can make it. You know, so a month out, no problem. 2 weeks out, if I'm open, I could do it. You know, like if we have a set time or something like that. But everybody's schedule is so different. It's hard to say.
Yeah, no, I know that everybody's not going to be able to attend every single time, but I was thinking about doing it just, once a month as a group right now.
Yeah.
I'm going to be working on me, and I'm going to be doing some traveling here and there, and so I'm also building my business, and I'm trying to build my business at the same time. So I probably am going to do it for a month out, but if we can get together before then, we'll make it happen. And if anybody wants to connect individually, that's probably more doable for me. You want to do a quick call, or we can make it really informal too. So anytime you guys want to, you're like, hey, I really want to kind of hash this out and talk about this, let's get a few people together, let's do that. Because
And there's the option for the live in the group, right? So we could always pop on the live or make a room and
Yeah.
see who's available. If someone's
Yeah.
got something to voice or something who's come up that might be interesting to everybody, and catch whoever's available.
yeah, I'm not sure how to do that yet, but yeah, definitely.
It's doable.
All right, well, it was so good to talk to you all and see your beautiful faces again. Blessings to everyone. Be well. We'll see you soon.
Thanks,
Okay, thank
Becky.
you.
Yep, bye-bye.
Thank you.